Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki te whareuranga o te kaunihira. Morning everyone and welcome to the Council Chamber for the Council meeting today, the 25th of March. Just a few reminders, the meeting is being live streamed. Got Councillor Maxwell joining us there on Zoom and the Mayor will be joining us shortly as well. Just a reminder to have your mobile phones on silent and we'll take a morning break later on. We'll start the meeting formally, so can I ask Councillor if you'll open the meeting with the karakia, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As is my custom, I shall do a variation of Parliament's opening prayer. Almighty God, we give thanks for the blessings which have been bestowed on us. Laying aside all personal interests, we pray for guidance in our deliberations, that we may conduct the affairs of this Council with wisdom, justice, mercy and humility for the welfare and peace of Rotorua. Amen.
Sorry, apologies. Apology from Councillor Rokawa take for sickness today. That has been moved by Councillor Temera Benfield. That's seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour to accept the apologies, please say aye. Against, thank you. That is carried. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Sanford?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have a conflict of interest later on in the meeting in the confidential agenda.
Thank you. We'll take that when we get to that part of the meeting. There are no urgent items or other matters that have been notified to the CE. Are there any other matters for discussion today? No, thank you. We have one public forum speaker. So I'd like to invite Therese Keane to come forward and speak on the placement of rocks at the lakefront and the upcoming changes to the rubbish collection schedule due to the implementation of the food and organic waste collection, with the red bins moving to fortnightly collection. Good morning, Therese. I think the staff have indicated to you that you have 5 minutes to speak on both of those topics. Thank you. If you just bring that microphone just a little bit closer to you and make sure that that little green light is on. And Greg Kick here will have a little timer here, which you can just follow so that you know when your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah. Good morning. I have actually had there should be a photo of a rock to go up. Is that right? No? Oh, it was sent through. Okay. Anyway, I have had a reply, and apparently these rocks I'm going to speak to are going to be moved in about 2 to 5 weeks, apparently. But I'll speak this. Well, in the picture I had, there's a big rock. 4 of them have been placed in Fenton Street and Whatau Streets entrance of all four passenger, people, entranceways to the footpath. I surmised that maybe it was for the grassways, which apparently it is, people riding vehicles up there. But pushchairs and wheelchairs now have a tough time getting to the pathways on Waikato Street with fairly consistent traffic. It's an issue, some with the others as cars come into the park, in the car park area. I was there a couple of weekends ago where an elderly couple using a walking frame, and the other lady had a walking stick, and she had to have help. They both did, with a few of us that were there at the time. Actually, many of us were shocked to see this when we first saw these big rocks around there. Safety is definitely a huge issue here. A friend of mine's husband is stage 2 Alzheimer's, and she had to really work with him that he wouldn't indirect him so that he wouldn't walk into one of those rocks, into the rock there. So it does need action. And I have had information last night, and apparently they're looking at putting bollards there when they remove the rocks. But can it be assured that they need to be, because I've had a look at bollards, those stick things that they put up to stop entranceways, but they need to be able so that pushchairs and wheelchairs and the elderly can actually get in there safely without having to go circumvent around the bollards. It's pretty big an issue. So The other issue is the red bin stopping on one of the. I said the cost-saving decision, I feel, will only generate more clean-up costs, in my opinion. If we look at this practically, even now as I regularly walk along my street to Russell Road, to Nongatau Walkway, and sometimes down the Russell Road Walkway down to Tahurangi Street, taking a bag with me now, an empty plastic bag, is a necessity. As I pick up a good bag full easily without in one circuit I do with my dog. I'm seriously concerned for all of our health and safety with this decision being enacted. Now, I hesitantly say this, but am wondering about practically what can be done. Otherwise, since funding seems to be an all-time low for the council, could the community at large be encouraged to help? As my experience of over 10 years in the Motorhome Association, where regular groups from there helped clean up the various local lands near to the parks, could get together, where regular groups got together to clean up and pick up around certain areas. Those were good times, getting to know people. So could we I hesitantly suggest this, community help, because I will help, but, in the areas, maybe getting a womble type, the sticks to be used to clear up the areas, our local areas here. I've been wondering about even gardening at times around the Nongatau Walkway, or for example, but done on a daily walk could be surprising as to how much gets done. I'm not sure how to go about this, but it seems our council could do with some practical help. That's my and maybe just filling a bag or pulling up some old road grass on a fine day could bring some smiles, and by taking that second bin, it will not help us in this city, in my opinion. Also, just in the health and safety issues as I say, it's already collecting around the place without the second bin going. So when the second bin goes, we're going to have issues, more so. And also the collecting of the food waste. I query that because I was in a South Waikato town back in 2011, and it lasted for about 6 months, and then it just got an issue because people weren't how it was gathered, how it was used, and so they pulled it in 6 months. So that was in Rotorua. But yeah, so that's. Oh, I meant to read. Sorry, this just quickly. This was just a reply on the email I got about the rocks. And she said to me, I can also confirm that I have checked. I followed up on an issue around the rocks on the footpath, and our council have advised me that due to number of vehicles using the footpaths to enter the park, they're going to put bollards. They're going to be replaced with bollards to create less of a restriction in the path. So, but we do need them with the width of the footpath that now is. It's just silly not to have anything inside the footpath does. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. That's perfect timing for the 5 minutes, and thank you for bringing those two matters to the council and for the work that you're doing to pick up litter, and I'm sure the community would get in behind any initiatives around that as well. So thank you for coming in today. Thank you. Councillors, we have quite a big agenda today, so going to stick, if we can, to standing orders. We have a number of items that we need to deal with, and then a number of confidential decisions to be taken later on. So I don't have any notices of motion. There are no presentations. So we're going to move straight into the staff reports. So 9.1 on your agenda at page 7. These are the draft non-financial performance measures for 25-26 financial year be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, carried. And welcome to Alex and Greg. Sorry, you can't hear me. I have to use my big loud voice.
Morning, councillors. I would just like to introduce Alex Barrett this morning. I know a lot of you may know her from previous work. For those of you who don't, Alex is in my team, and the performance measures sit under her remit to try and gather across the organisation and report to audit. So I'll pass it on to Alex.
Greg. Tēnā rā tātou, tēnā koe, Madam Chair. So I'll just run through a brief presentation on the non-financial performance measures results for both Q1 and Q2 for this financial year. I'll take a highlight from each of the 9 activity groups as we go through. You have the full results as an attachment to your report with commentary for each of the measures. So, performance management framework. The purpose of this is to track progress against our LTP from a service delivery perspective. It's also to define the level of service that the community can expect from us. We're currently in year 2 of our LTP for the 25-26 financial year, and next year with the setting of the new LTP, all of these measures will be reviewed. As you know, our LTP is set out with 9 activity groups. Across these 9 activity groups, we have 65 performance measures in total. 25 of these measures are mandatory measures set through the DIA, which are for all councils. So how are we going? Tracking for our year-end results. So from the 65 measures, we currently have 9% that are not yet measured. That's mainly due to timing, so it may be an annual audit or a year-end survey, so we will have the full results available for you at the end of the financial year. 65% of the 65 measures are currently on track to achieve at year-end, and 26% of them are currently not on track to achieve at year-end. So community leadership activity, we have 4 measures across this group. 1 is not yet measured, 1 is on track, and 2 are not on track. The 2 that are not on track are through our customer satisfaction residents experience monitor, and that is for both how the council keeps the community informed and also how that council represents the best interests of the district. For community safety, we have 10 measures. 1 is not yet measured, 6 are on track, and 3 are not on track. The ones that are on track are highlighted there. 1 is 100% of our known dogs registered or owners infringed, and that is on track for it to be met at the end of the year. District growth and development, we have 6 measures across this activity. 2 are on track, 4 are not on track. One of the ones that is not on track is our customer satisfaction rating for our planning and resource consents. Through our residents experience monitor, we have a very small sample size. And so the teams are currently working on putting a process in place to have a better result at the end of the financial year, which is directly surveying customers after a resource consent. So we're aiming to get a more reliable measure for you. Across spaces, places and recreation, we have 11 measures. 2 are not yet measured, 4 are on track, and 5 are not on track. The Sir Howard Morrison Centre is performing well with both number of event days and numbers of attendance. The Energy Event Centre is not currently on track for year end, and that is mainly due to a shutdown period due to kitchen renovations, refurbishments through Montana Catering, which is in your results. Stormwater, we're pleased to say that 100% of our measures across our 3 waters activities are achieved to date. Across stormwater, we have higher customer satisfaction rate of our stormwater network compared to the previous financial year. For our transport activity, we have 2 not yet measured, 3 on track, and 1 not on track. For on track, the team have consistently high response rates to responding to requests within the 5 days. Wastewater, again, 100% of our measures are achieved, and we have faster response times compared to the previous financial year to attending sewage overflows. Waste and sustainability, we have 5 measures, 3 are on track and 2 are not on track. For the total amount of waste being sent to landfill, the teams do expect a significant reduction when FOGO is introduced, and so those results will be reflected in next financial year's results. And water, again, 100% of our measures are achieved to date. We have both faster median response times and resolution times to our non-urgent faults compared to the previous financial year. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Alex, and nice to see you presenting here in the chamber today.
Thank you.
So, questions for Alex on this, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you, Alex, for your report. Yes, I'd like to echo the sentiments of Deputy Mayor Kai Fong. Good to see you in the chair. Firstly, you might want to send those good bits of news on our customer satisfaction survey regarding our 3 waters. To have all 3 absolutely spot on, might want to be sent to Taumata Arawai and maybe even DIA to show that we are doing our local water well. Just a question I do have on is the spaces, places and recreation. It's probably the largest amount of dissatisfaction or not achieved. For the benefit of those viewing, could you outline why that might be?
Councillor, the spaces, places and recreation activity in our LTP is actually our largest activity and covers a huge span of activities across our organisation, which may be sort of parks and reserves all the way through to our events that are handled by Rotorua NZ. So it is a very broad activity. Remember that this is a year-to-date result. This is our 6-month tracking. So we are doing whatever we can to make sure that we get those non-achieved at this stage into the achieved bucket by the end of the year.
That's a good challenge. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Thank you very much for the report, Alex. Again, this is, I guess, following on from Don's question around spaces, places and recreation. In the more detailed bit of information that you provided in our reading pack, and I'm not sure that this is a really sort of finicky question, so there's 2 points in there: percentage of users satisfied with Council's open space network, and then the visitor experience satisfaction rating for security in open space locations. And so for both of those, we've interviewed 113 park users, and I'm just worrying about, I would be really interested to know why people aren't using the parks instead of actually interviewing park users per se, because I'd want to know why people aren't satisfied with our parks to be able to use them. And I was just wondering if some way in the future that we can get information from non-users that would also feed into this report so we can understand why that happens.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Madam Chair. So we do have an opportunity through the long-term plan to relook at these and go, well, what would make sense and what would provide the best information. I think this is something that we can take on board and bring back to you through the development of our long-term plan. So thank you for that.
Morning, Your Worship. Did I see you waving? Did you have a question? No.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to add to that, as part of your inductions, we provided to each of you quite an in-depth report on the Residents' Experience Monitor, which is the data that most of the customer satisfaction metrics that you're seeing here are pulled from. There is a piece in there that we can analyse around your question, Councillor Sanford, but to Greg's point around why we report them as worded, that's something we're locked into as part of a long-term plan. As we kick off your work program for next time's long-term plan, there's an opportunity for us to refine those as you see fit so that we more accurately reflect what you actually want to measure. As Greg mentioned, as Alex mentioned in the presentation, a number of these are mandatory, we can't do anything about, but others are discretionary, and it's up to this council to set as you wish. Thanks.
Doesn't seem to be any further questions, so thank you, Greg and Alex, for the presentation, and these will be updated as we go along. Remember, this is only to 6 months. Thank you very much. And we'll move on now to the Local Alcohol Policy 2026 Amendment. It's page 11 of your agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Temera Benfeld. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And good morning, Kurt. In your hands, Greg or Kurt.
Morning again, councillors. The report in front of you today is to bring back the results of consultation on the local alcohol policy amendment that went out for consultation over January and February. Just by way of reminder and overview, this back in 2025 we did a comprehensive local alcohol policy review where we went out for consultation and adopted the refreshed local alcohol policy in June last year. Following that, we found that there was a loophole within the wording that would only kick in the times of trading times for off licenses at renewal stage. So we went out and consulted with the community on changing the wording within the local alcohol policy to reflect that this can be done within 3 months of adoption of this policy. As you'll see in your report, that this was largely supported or unanimously supported by those who provided feedback on this policy. I will leave it there and happy to take any questions, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Greg. I think this is fairly self-explanatory. We've had this come before us a couple of times. Any questions, though, to the staff on this? No? Okay, well, we have a couple of resolutions up there, which are in your pack. I don't need to read them out, I don't think. Can I have a... Thank you, Councillor Wang. You're happy to move those resolutions there. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any discussion on these? Councillor Wang, do you wish to say anything? Really straightforward.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think it's pretty straightforward. We've second round of consultation and we've heard the feedback from our respondents on that, so I think we've had ample discussion on this. Happy to be supporting that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Now I'm going to now put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you. Those resolutions are carried. Thank you very much. We will now move on to page 17 of your agenda. We're doing the proposed traffic bylaw 2026 and the proposed parking policy 2026 adoption. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive both of those reports? Thank you, Councillor Temera Benfeld, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And we're going to welcome Kurt and also welcome first time to Ashton Mishmash, who works in the governance team. You're in the hot seat today, so nice to see you here. And we're in your hands.
Thank you, Councillor Kaifong. I'm here to present the report on the decision for the proposed traffic bylaw 2026, the proposed parking policy 2026, and the guidelines that go along with that. In July 2025, Council made the decision to move the enforcement and the operations of parking back into Council. And in December of 2025, Council approved a consultation round to go to the public to consult onto these documents. In December 15th, Council proceeded with that consultation, and that completed on February. We received roughly, I think it was 546, the numbers in the report, can't remember off the top of my head. And overall, the community had a very overwhelming positive sentiment towards all three of the documents that we consulted on. In addition, you'll see that in the thematic analysis, Council also engaged the public on some general questions that were related to the operations. This is not directly related to the policy and the bylaw and the guidelines, but we noted it and we included that as part of the report. Otherwise, I will take the report as read.
Thank you very much, Ashton. Are there any questions to Ashton on this? The copy of the proposed bylaw was in the pack as a separate attachment. I just had a couple. Just give councillors a minute just to go through their pack. Sorry, I did have... If there are no questions to Ashton, there are a couple of recommendations in the pack. One of the things is that there may be some minor amendments that we just need to look at, so we'll just add an additional clause up there which will authorise the Chief Executive to make any minor editorial changes prior to finalisation of this. So I take it there are no questions on this, councillors? No? Okay, so we are going to adopt the proposed Traffic Bylaw 2026 with the commencement date of 1 July 26, adopt the proposed Parking Policy 2026 and replace the operative performance-based Parking Management Practices Policy and Guidelines. We're going to adopt the proposed Parking Management Guidelines 2026 and also give the Chief Executive that authorisation to make any minor editorial changes. With that, can I have a mover and a seconder for those resolutions? Thank you, Councillor Wang. Seconded, Councillor Brown. Any discussion on this? Once again, this is a topic that's been before Council on several occasions. Councillor Wang, did you, as the mover, wish to speak first? Or otherwise, I see Councillor Lee wishes to make some comments. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Oh, sorry, Ashton and Kurt, as we've taken the resolutions, if you could just step away, that would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was rather pleased last year when we were invited to sit down with council staff and look at the parking arrangements for our city with what I thought would be a blank piece of paper. And I was a little disappointed when, in fact, it seemed that we didn't have time available to us to explore a rather different parking arrangement from what we've ended up with. So I'm a wee bit underwhelmed, although I acknowledge that there's 80% approval from the submitters. That said, I'd like to quote one particular submitter, which takes us to the heart of my concerns about all this.
Councillor, I'm just checking, we are talking about the traffic bylaw, not the actual...
Parking arrangements?
Yes, that's another item that we're going to talk about separately.
Oh, okay.
So we're talking about the Rotorua Traffic Bylaw, which is in your pack.
Okay. Then it's a parking one that I was shooting for, so I might have shot first a little early. Thanks for that.
Are there any other questions? Any other comments in relation to this since the resolutions have been moved and seconded? No? Councillor Wang? No? Okay. I've read... Councillor Brown, did you wish to say something? I've read those out, so I'm now going to put those resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? No? Thank you. Those are carried. Thank you, councillors. Move to item 9.4, page 27 of your agenda. This is the Local Governance Statement 25 to 2028. Can I have a move and a seconder that the report be received? Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Thank you, Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And good morning, Deb.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Your Worship. The Local Government Act requires us to produce a local government statement within 6 months of the triennial elections. The purpose of the statement is to provide the community with information on how council operates, makes its decisions and engages with our residents. Once approved, it will go up on our website, so it's available for everybody to see how we operate. It's quite prescriptive, what goes into the statement. It's outlined in the Act, and I think Section 40. So, pretty much what we do is after each election, we review the previous government statement and update it and put a new one up. There's just one point that I would like to draw your attention to. In the document on page 24, you'll see these terms of reference for the Rotorua Future Development Joint Committee. Those still need to be approved at your council meeting in April, so we have a recommendation just to make minor changes if necessary to that in the document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb, and nice to see you here too. Any questions then to Deb around the governance statement? There's a full copy in Stella. Perhaps it might be something councillors might like to get a printed copy of, and it's your guiding document for the way in which we work together as well. Any questions to Deb on this? No, there don't appear to be any questions. Thank you very much, Deb. Can I have a mover and a seconder then that we resolve to approve for public release the Rotorua Lakes Council Local Governance Statement 25 to 28. In Council notes, the minor amendments will be made following the finalisation of the terms of reference for the Rotorua Future Development Joint Committee. That's moved Councillor Temera Benfeld, seconded by Councillor Barker. Any discussion on this? Once again, pretty straightforward. No, well, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I saw the hand going up there. Going to now move to page 30 of the agenda. I'll just give you time to go back to the agenda. Page 30, we are going to go into the council submission to the Toi Moana Bay of Plenty Regional Council's Annual Plan 26-27 and Long-Term Plan Amendment. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Temera Benfeld. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. This report was circulated by Greg on Friday. It was a very comprehensive submission that had been put together after the feedback that councillors had with a workshop with the regional councillors. Some questions were posed at that workshop. That feedback was collated by Her Worship the Mayor, and I also had circulated a number of other questions and suggestions in relation to the submission. Those were also sent out to councillors for feedback. So if there are any questions to Greg on this, otherwise I will take it that the submission has been read. Are there any questions? No, no questions. It's a very comprehensive submission, and we have reserved the right to speak to this. Your Worship, did you wish to make any comments on this before I put the motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and kia ora everyone. Apologies to be joining by Zoom. I just want to acknowledge the detail in the submission that we've put through. A lot of the background in this came from the feedback that we received from councillors when our regional council presented to us. But I also want to acknowledge that our Bay of Plenty Regional Council and all regional councils across the country are in very uncertain times with the government proposals to essentially disestablish the councillors alone. And so we do have regional councils across the country that are looking at significantly changing what they do. And of course, for our region in particular, there's a very strong focus on how Quayside can be continued to not only be managed within the region or locally, but also see the benefits of that significant asset distributed in the region. So I just want to acknowledge that there could be significant change coming up. We do wish our regional council all the best in this change in the challenging times, and they do currently play a significant role around our environment, which is why we have included aspects in there such as the biosecurity, in particular knowing that we have an issue with our lakes around lakeweed and golden clams as well. So thank you once again to staff, and we do look forward to presenting to this in person, and so we'll check in with all councillors before we do so as well to make sure that your key messages are shared in that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So are there any other comments people wish to make? Otherwise I'm going to put the resolution to adopt the submission as it's been drafted currently. So I'm going to seek a mover and a seconder that the Council approve the submission to Toi Moana Bay of Plenty Regional Council's Annual Plan, which is Attachment 1. Can I have a mover? That be Your Worship, I take it? Thank you, Your Worship. Seconded by Councillor Barker. Any further discussion on this item? It doesn't appear to be any, so I'm now going to put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much, councillors, and Greg will make sure that that gets submitted to the Bay Plenty Regional Council, and we will also reserve the right to speak to that if we need to. Page 33 of your agenda now, Civil Defence Emergency Management recommendation to appoint an additional alternate local controller. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Welcome, Stavros.
Morena tatu katoa. Through you, Madam Chair, the report, I hope, is self-explanatory. Part of one of the many regulatory or statutory obligations we've got is to be able to meet the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Act. In order to do that, we need to be able to stand at any given time a complement of about 90 fully trained staff from our existing employees. Managing those staff are the function of the controller. Because in an emergency we need to be able to operate on a 24/7 basis, we need to have at least 3 nominated controllers. And as people leave and they change employment and so on, we have a gap in here, and obviously our nomination with Sam Fellow, who's the new senior manager, who's got the background and experience to be able to do that work. It's recommended that you approve his appointment to that position to support me and the other two controllers available to maintain continuity and capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Any questions to Stavros? Thank you, Councillor Wang. Thank you, Stavros. It doesn't appear there's any questions. I think this is once again fairly straightforward. So we're going to appoint Sam the man. So Councillor Wang has moved that the Council endorse the nomination of the following staff member to the appointment of the alternate local controller, Sam Fellows, Group Manager, Organisational Performance and Innovation. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I don't think we need any discussion on this. It's straightforward. All those in favour to appoint Sam, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And thank you very much, Sam. And let's keep our fingers crossed we don't get any heavy rain this weekend. Page 37, councillors, we're now moving to 9.7, the financial update for February 26. I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Thank you very much, Councillor Barker, and seconded Councillor Timura Benfell. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And welcome to David.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor Kaifong and councillors. So my report covers the period to the end of February. I'll take the report largely as read, but there's a couple of themes that I would like to draw your attention to. Just wait for the presentation to be loaded. The first major theme that you'll see coming through Council's finances at the end of February is the continuing delays in finalising the variation on the IIG Stormwater project. I know I've talked about that at length over the last several months. However, here we are a month later with no material movement in finalising that variation, so you'll see that coming through in a number of ways. Firstly, that project is now $20 million underspent year to date. That means that our capital revenue is also significantly behind. If we haven't spent the money, we can't receive the subsidy. And you'll also see that coming through in places like interest expense being lower because we have lower debt, and also lower depreciation because we can't depreciate assets we haven't built. So that the delay in finalising the variation on that project is starting to materially impact Council's financial statements as at the end of February, and we're monitoring that through how we're tracking for the remainder of the financial year. You'll see there that with our Council's overall revenue is $28 million behind year-to-date budget, and that is substantially driven by those capital subsidies. $26 million of that is entirely related to capital subsidies. And again, development contributions behind budget as we flush through some of those older consents before we can charge genuinely everybody that applies for a development. Council's expenditure is $1.6 million under budget as at the end of February, and that's driven predominantly through lower depreciation, lower interest, and a number of smaller budget items there. That is after taking into account that Council received we're dealing with some significant legal issues at the moment, particularly with the judicial review on Rotorua and some arbitration with some of our suppliers on major contracts. And some of those legal fees have fallen through into February, which you'll see there in the P&L when I get to it. Council's capital expenditure is $43 million behind our year-to-date budget. That is driven primarily through the IAG stormwater and some delays in some of the other projects that are underway. We are finalising a organisation-wide forecast for where we will sit at the end of the year, which I'll bring to you next month. But forecasting now that we will not achieve the full-year budget. We will be realistically around the 70% delivery against the full project, the full program. Sorry. And Council's net debt at the end of February was $465 million. When we adopted the annual plan for this year, the full year forecast for Council's debt was $530 million. So we will be substantially lower debt because we haven't spent our entire capital program, and we've managed to crystallise that lower debt. Preparing next year's annual plan, just making sure that we're properly accounting for what we expect to pay in interest for next year in the annual plan. So Council currently has a $1.4 million operating surplus once we take away the impact of those capital subsidies and the development contributions. We are monitoring that for how we expect to land at the end of the financial year. We are aware that we are operating in an environment where a number of headwinds are starting to emerge, particularly with global supply and with fuel. We are working with our business and our external providers around what that might mean. A number of our significant contracts are pretty explicit with what guaranteeing our cost with fuel. There are a number of other areas that we're working through what that might mean should petrol and fuel prices continue to track higher. I'll briefly go through Council's profit and loss statement. So you'll see there that the rates are higher, $2.5 million higher than year-to-date budget, and again that is due to the higher amount of ratepayers in Rotorua paying by lump sum, as well as lower rates for emissions. So we do have a budget in there for rates for emissions, and we are tracking lower than we had budgeted. So those two combined mean that we are above budget by $2.5 million with rates. Investment income is where we bring in our rates revenue predominantly 4 times a year, and we place it on term deposit until we need it. And we've achieved some good returns there with our term deposits, and we're currently sitting $492,000 ahead of our year-to-date budget. Development contributions and capital grants I've talked about briefly, and subsidies and grants operational is over budget we've received $561,000 more than our budget, and that is tied pretty much exclusively to storm and weather events expenses, maintenance that we've had to do after in our roading department. We spend money in our operating expenses, and then some of that is subsidised by NZTA Wakakatahi. So there's been an impact there with some of the storm events through the year. You'll see there the operating expenses are $1.5 million higher than year-to-date budget. So, as I mentioned earlier, some legal fees that are coming through, higher expenditure in roading with responding to storms that we've partially offset by additional revenue from Wakakatahi, and also some costs coming through from geothermal and some of the regulatory areas such as door control. With our staff costs, you'll see there that the staff costs are currently $900,000 below the year-to-date budget. We are starting to notice a trend where our our turnover is not increasing, but it is taking longer to place suitably qualified candidates. We are seeing, there's no uptick in the turnover. It's just taking a little longer to find the right people where we need to fill some vacant positions. And then depreciation and interest below year-to-date budget tied to the lower capital expenditure. Lastly, just with our capital expenditure, we're currently sitting at, we've spent $62 million against a year-to-date budget of $105 million. We set ourselves a very high target through the annual plan around what was achievable, and even setting aside the impact of IIG and the delays getting that variation signed. There are a number of areas where we will not achieve the full budget this year, and we'll bring that forward into next council meeting just with a bit more granularity on where those under budget expenditures are likely to happen. I've broken the actual and budget into the LTP categories, the LTP areas, and you'll see there that stormwater and land drainage being $21 million behind budget, and also some smaller underspends in other areas, but predominantly in that stormwater area. So I'm happy to take questions on the report or the presentation.
Thank you very much, David. I think Andrew just wanted to make a comment as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just want to just outline now before we get into questions, a number of these items are driven from capital projects and contracts where we have some potentially commercially sensitive matters that we're dealing with, and so just there might be some questions that might better be answered in a confidential session later in the council meeting. So just keep that in mind as we might try and delicately answer some of these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions in to David? Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Should I say, Deputy Mayor Kai Vaughan. The fees and charges, particularly now I've lost my train of thought. The development contributions, that's where I was going. How long will the old ones take to flush out? We've been talking about this for quite some time. How many more are left?
There are, through the chair, there are a number. So we went for a decade without having a DC policy, and there are, from memory, there's a period of about 7 years from the time somebody lodges to when they qualify to develop. So I guess how long it will take to flush out all of them will depend on how readily the developers proceed to progress. We have made adjustments to our budgets going forward in the upcoming annual plan, and we'll do so more so for the long-term plan to make sure that we get it right going forward. But flushing through the old ones will depend entirely on how ready developers are to move on things that on applications they've put in over the last several years.
Understand, thank you. And my second question, if I may, just the next highest, I guess you could say, budget shortfall would be community well-being. So what is made up in that?
Through the chair, there's a number of projects that would sit in behind there. And the lion's share of that underspend year to date is actually the museum, where we are expecting to spend the full budget for the full year, but just with the timing of when some of those expenses are likely to fall. At the end of February, we were about $4 million behind the year-to-date budget. So expecting to be fully spent at year end, but with the timing of when we thought we would spend money in the year versus where we have. So there's more timing.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David, for the report. Just heading on to page 40, where we talk about the operating expenses being higher than normal, and just the dog control in particular being higher than usual. Is that due? Can you give me any further detail on the drivers of that?
Through the chair, certainly. So when people decide, or when people don't pay their dog registration, it hits us in a couple of ways. Firstly, our user fee revenue is lower, and secondly, our operating expenses become higher because following through on our regulatory function, we need to chase people and make sure and encourage them to pay through various ways. So, and through the enforcement of that parking activity of the animal control activity. Additional legal fees, additional costs in trying to chase people up who haven't paid, and remembering that there are a large number of people who choose not to pay their dog registration. The cost of enforcement becomes higher the more that people don't pay.
Thank you. Just one further question around the dog control again. Are there any other costs associated with the increase in activity in the dog control area, animal control area, or because it seems to me that there appears to be more enforcement happening, more dogs being picked up and held in the pound. Are there increased costs compared to previous years around that, or you're not able to answer that question at this stage?
I might throw that over to JP.
Yeah, through Madam Chair. The short answer is yes. We've had, like many places, we're seeing an increase in the number of unregistered dogs, which leads to additional enforcement burden, mainly on, as the CFO has described. Once we've identified those through patrols, there's often additional fees if the dog's been impounded, and a snowball of costs that come out of that. So, yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Timoro Benfell.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, kia ora, thank you for your presentation. David, my question is in relation to the IIG subsidy. Are there any significant risks that we should be aware of? I'm mindful of how long the variation is taking to solidify. Is there a risk for us that the subsidy might be withdrawn or go over time, or because I imagine that would have quite a significant impact?
Yeah, I'm back. Councillor, if I could jump in, I've been quite closely involved with these. Could I answer those questions
Absolutely.
In the confidential section, please?
Yeah, perfect.
Councillor Senford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the community leadership, and just noting we're about 40% behind in the spend there, and I was just wondering if you could advise what that's made up of.
So, through the Chair, so I don't have the granular information in front of me, but I'm happy to circulate that after the meeting.
I can offer some insight. I think I might preface my comments by saying sometimes the labels that go on these things doesn't accurately describe what's in the tin, and that's often because of the mapping between your activity categories when you set a long-term plan, and then what activities fall within that a couple of years later, as we're now experiencing. We can circulate this information, but I expect this is largely driven from the roof renewals of this building, which is a large chunk of community leadership. The maintenance of this building falls under that activity. We're a little bit behind in terms of timing of renewing the roof of this building. That'll be a big chunk of it. There might be other elements as well, but we'll see that come through. But again, I just wanted to highlight that it may not be intuitive that maintenance of the civic building falls into that category, but that's the consequence. Thanks.
Any further questions for David on the financials? Nope, there don't appear to be any further questions. Thank you very much, David, for your report. Councillors, we're now going to move on to the Community Experience Dashboard. So for our newer councillors, this is the reporting that we get back from the various group managers. And this is the first time, I think, that we'll have had this report back from Alex in this committee. So I just need a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation Community Experience Dashboard. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. And welcome, Alex.
Kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. As Madam Chair mentioned, this marks really the first quarterly report with our refreshed measures for this council to review. We've taken pains to ensure that there's no duplication with the LTP measures, which you've seen previously in this agenda. It has been a little bit of time since we last reported. I think it was probably this might be the first time for this particular council, so there is quite a bit to cover. So bear with me. And behind me, you will see the experts who will pop up between each section, so we can ask questions. And that's something I covered off with the chair prior to this morning as well. All right. So if we start with the library. Moving into our highlights and challenges, just to orientate you, this is in relation to our customer experience team. We are averaging across the year a 93% satisfaction rate. You'll see the graph later on will give you a little bit of a variation on month to month, but we're getting some really strong feedback, positive feedback from our customers at the end of last year related to our Library to You home-based delivery services. Out of interest, we did around 116 housebound visits. We averaged that about per month, as well as 36 bulk loan visits per month as well. So, and that covers around 1,200 resources getting out to people who can't make it into our central library. There's been quite a strong focus on behavioural response training for library staff, and that's just to manage the sort of day-to-day interactions we have with our customers. That has also allowed us to reduce this in-library security presence that we were paying for as well, and we're getting really good response from the team that having those additional skills is making that work environment really beneficial. We are slightly down on door count. Julianne's done quite a bit of analysis over time. We're sitting at about, I think, 1.4% below our financial year to date. The longer term trends are indicating that it's actually relatively stable since 2023. We are on a bit of a build back from COVID, but that longitudinal view allows us to kind of understand that we're tracking and probably as best as we can be. The team have spent quite a bit of time looking to try and pull together all the various different pieces of data that they collect. So we have Public Library New Zealand, we have our cataloguing database, we have our door count information, issues information, and we're trying to start to connect all those to actually make some really good decisions around how we present and manage our collections and the types of programs that we provide. So while I've got it as a challenge, it's actually a good thing because it's helping us make some good decisions in terms of the services we provide to people. In terms of our heritage and research, you'll see this on the graph as well. This is an area that is showing real strong signs of growth. We've got high demands around inquiries and also use of resources there. The library continues to look at opportunities to bring funding in, so to reduce the burden on the ratepayer, and we've received just over $6,000 from the Francis Moss Board, and that's been used to purchase rare books, which is also helping strengthen that research collection. We've had 3 local high schools, so Western Heights, Rotorua Boys and Rotorua Girls, incorporate the great Te Arawa stories, which is part of the collection in this space, into their curriculum. So, yeah, again, a really strong link for understanding our customer and getting the right stuff there. I mentioned briefly that we're looking at the data that we have available to us, and some of the outcomes of that analysis is allowing us to work out how we best organise and present our lower performing collections. I sort of liken it to a supermarket. Those prime rows in a supermarket is where you want to be, and we've worked out that if you put a collection right in front of someone's face, they're more likely to be interested and check it out. So some really good, sensible, pragmatic steps there. We've also seen a really big, strong increase in our ebook and audiobook checkouts. And again, you may recall through your induction, Julianne mentioning that actually that's allowing us to actually analyse which of those e-resources and subscriptions are performing really well compared to which of those that aren't, and then making investment decisions based on that as well. Checkout analysis, you'll see physical issues are still trending down. You'll see that in the graph, but with ebooks trending upwards. The really big, transformation for us in that space again was COVID. So where people were forced onto those e-platforms. But I think the graph does a really good job of showing actually we're still largely a physical book predominant, library at this stage. But yeah, really good increase in that e-resource area. Sorry, excuse me. And then in terms of our community learning and promotions, you will have seen this in the LTP measures. We are down in terms of the numbers attending of our programs. That's largely at the end of the day because of vacancies that we've been carrying for some time since the end of last year. I think the main message here is it is a really lean team that does those programs, and those programs do generate around 10% of our total visitations, so they are pretty significant. What the team did in response to that, though, rather than trying to deliver lots with very limited resources, we focused on quality. So we reduced the number that we had on offer, and that's why you're seeing a drop in those LTP measures. We have a really great couple of partnerships underway, though, that's sort of seeing some of that those metrics bounce back recently. So Sport Bay of Plenty, Royal New Zealand Ballet, and the Chamber of Commerce partnerships that we're seeing some good gains and interest from our community on. So getting to the data, we had previously reported sort of on a month-by-month basis, but we actually thought that a view over a period of 12 months was probably more helpful to look at trends. That dotted line trend on the left-hand graph does show that overall we are tracking upwards across all of the collections, but you can see that trend around e-resources continuing to sort of bump up. So for those of you that like the statistics, physical issues, we're down year to date about 2%, but ebooks are up about 9%, e-press is up about 21% from the same time last year. So total, all up, we're about up 1.8% on year to date overall. Heritage and research, you can see here really strongly how much that area of the library is growing. So we're e-resources through the heritage and research group are up at over 200% from the same on 2025. Inquiries, while they are down slightly overall, just 2% in year to date, 0.3%, but we are seeing sustained growth overall. And then just the customer experience, residents experience monitor. So we achieved 92% in the last round of surveying, but our average is holding strong at about 93. Really good outcome there for the library. Programs and events, so I've covered this a little bit, but you can see that dip in December where we had to make some tough decisions to focus on kind of quality rather than quantity. We are seeing we've broken that down so you can have a look at the kind of mix around children versus youth, adult, and then sort of general events. We are seeing some really strong growth in the adult learning and event space. So those are up year to date around 20% and 42%. We're seeing a decline in children's programs, so they're down about 9.3%, as well as youth's down just nearing on 3%. We think the changes we're making in that space are making some positive impacts. So we've got some really strong bookings for term 1, so we're at capacity for this term, which is a good outcome.
I think we'll just take a break there. I don't know if Julian, if you want to come forward in case there are any questions. So we'll take questions on the library. Well, we've got Julian here, so if there are any, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation as well, Alex and Julianne. I guess I just have a question just around with, forecast turbulent times ahead, what you expect probably to see in terms of, entries through the door, whether or not that's going to probably show an increase in the e-resource, the e-books, or e-press kind of checkouts, or because there are also free, programs and stuff run from the library, that we might see an increase in that as well. So, is there anything that you could probably look into the magic orb and tell us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang, through you, Madam Chair. It is a bit of crystal ball gazing, isn't it, especially in this climate with fuel. So I'm just working out a bit of a plan for that at the moment. But without including that, the trends and the view of the sector, who I work quite closely with, is that physical collections are reasonably stagnant. They're not going away. They still make up the bulk of our collection issues. Checkouts, I should say. Issues confuses people. Sorry about that. But e-use is definitely on the increase. It's becoming more and more popular, particularly audiobooks. So we are doing some work at the moment to analyse our spend based on use and working through that. The other thing we're doing is we're working on a future libraries plan, and that's marrying up what we know from the data with what we're going to be hearing from our community when we ask them the question, so that we can make sure we're prudently managing our budgets aligned with what we need to deliver to our community. We're looking at international trends and national trends as part of that piece of work.
I think just further to that, Julianne mentioned a really important point. I think the next report will be interesting to see if we see demand for library to you grow significantly if we have ongoing challenges around fuel, as well as e-press and e-subscriptions too.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Julianne. Welcome back. Just wondering what we are up to with the possibility of reopening the library on Sundays. That on the radar as a possibility?
We haven't considered that. The requests, I guess, from the community are not so much that we would look into that as an option, unless, of course, we're directed by council to do so. So we haven't investigated that. From the data, it's not telling us that it's having a significant impact on our delivery and our services. So nothing that we've considered at the moment.
Oh, you don't think it would help get the door count up a little? No?
I think the data's telling us that it hadn't had a great enough negative impact for us to review opening again on a Sunday. We may find with the investigation we're doing into our Future Libraries project, where we will be engaging with the community and asking them about barriers, it may come up as a topic there, and then we can reconsider it if we need to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you for your report, Julianne and Alex. Just with regards to the e-books, would you, given that we have an ageing population and some of the side effects of that are sight becoming challenging to actually see the small print and standard books, even holding large books can also become a challenge. So with the things of like Kindle, etc., and e-book readers, do you see that that's potentially a significant area that we should be giving serious consideration to?
Yes, it is. There's quite a few factors that go into those considerations. So we do have a large print book collection, specifically because we recognise people can't read the smaller print. So it's one of our most popular collections. But in terms of e-use, we've actually just taken out our talking book collection. So for those of you who don't know what a talking book collection is, it's just CDs that you play in your CD player, and of course that's a piece of technology that's more difficult. So we are running specific classes with people who want to encourage and upskill them on using devices to access our e-audiobook collections. We will be doing a piece of investigative work into devices as well. Currently, the offering is rather expensive, so we will have to consider that.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the library? No? Thank you very much, Julianne. And we're going to carry on now with the museum.
Excellent. Thanks, Gomathi, for helping me move that on. Last month you will have heard an update from Will. I'll touch briefly just on the museum program as a whole before I dive specifically into the exhibition. As you all know, construction started back in July 2024 with a practical completion set for September this year. So that means we're roughly about 20 months through a 26-and-a-half-month program. And we've had reports outlining that we're about 75% of the works being completed on site. So construction itself is tracking really well. Discoverables are still a possibility and are still happening. So that's why it falls into the challenges space. And we're carefully monitoring our contingency as those discoverables come up. Structural works are pretty much coming to completion, so that means the focus now is on those kind of architectural finishes, the inside finishing touches, and a focus on the heritage restoration works. So overall, we're tracking well in terms of budget, and we're in a really good place to see that project through to completion. Developed design will be complete in 2026. So just a reminder, there's 3 design stages. There was concept design, developed design, and then detailed design. So we're in that second phase of developed design. And following that, we'll have that detailed design and then installation. We're on track for a mid-2028 opening. So the exhibition and construction teams are working really closely, because as we get closer to the end, we need to make sure that those 2 pieces of work come together, and we're making good use of the construction capability that we have on site. And then that'll help with a smoother transition around fit out as well. It's been well stated, I think, before, that the reopening program is making significant progress. We're on track to have our exhibition developed design 70% completed in May, and then a couple of workshops with councillors with a report back in June planned as well, with 100% completed later in October. The fundraising, and we're sort of, I'll touch on that on some of the graphs. We still are looking at around 7.84 million in terms of exhibition funding, but the good news is the work that we've done to date in terms of our fundraising efforts has meant that the final design stage, detailed design, is now fully funded through that external funding. So every dollar that we earn now through fundraising is going towards the fit out of the exhibition, the installation of the exhibition, which is really great news. And lots of things on the highlight reel to talk about on the next slide. So challenges, exhibition funding remains a focus. That is where all of our effort and activity is really spent at this stage. Discoverables continue to be something we keep a close eye on, and then probably the third piece is the sector capacity for installation. So we know that there's a few museums seem to be really popular, and so there is a challenge for us to make sure that we're getting the right people lined up to do our installation piece when we need it. So that's just something we're watching pretty closely. One of the other arms of the program is operational enablement. So those are all of the activities that need to happen to be able to operate a successful museum. Part of that includes the gardens and the surrounds of the museum as you come in. So we've been working with our Parks and Open Spaces team, and you'll see both of them this as highlights. We've actually completed a draft landscaping design for the external gardens. We have plans afoot for renewals around the landscaping and the footpath and the road. So it's it looks as good on the outside as it does, or good on the approach as it does when you get to the inside. And we've also been working closely with our financial team to get the modelling for the operation of the museum confirmed. So that's around retail, ticketing, cafe, and exploring kind of other options around that too. One of the key parts to the museum team is the education that we offer to schools within the region and also outside of the region. I guess focusing on the challenges first, it's still been a build back really from COVID and also from the museum being closed, but we have seen some really positive numbers in terms of Term 4's performance. So that jumped up on 53% from the same period last time. The bookings for this term as well are fully booked, so that's showing some good growth there. But we'll probably still come under, and you'll have a look at you'll be able to see that in the graphs. Good news is though our Ngāti Whakaoi Education Endowment Trust is still being strong partners for us and looking at subsidising that transport for local schools to participate in the program. And the recent art awards also attracted, close to 200 students through as part of their experience. As I mentioned, this has been kind of a key focus for the last quarter. We've now, we're now well over $1.5 million that we've fundraised for the exhibition. A huge amount of work there, and I'd just like to again say thanks to all of our partners that really make this happen. As I stated, that means that we now have, now have funding to cover all the design stages. So, every dollar is helping us get that exhibition back. And we've did a soft launch of the 1,000 Friends campaign. So Friends of the Museum initiated this campaign, launched it as part of the Art Awards, and that is going from strength to strength. So that's sitting at 27 in this report. My last little mini update on the spot, I think we're well over 30,000 now. So that is essentially $1,000 per person donation. So we've got a lot of supporters out there. We do have a public launch for the campaign planned, and look, I will say this and no more. There's some national interest in the campaign and some of our philanthropic partners, and we hope that that's going to result in some fantastic uptake around this initiative as well. One of the key pieces that we launched was the Art Awards. So we had strong attendance there. It was a great way to bring awareness to the museum as well. So we had some really good coverage and some good sales. So I think 23 of the artworks were sold, total value of around 18,000, and that helped raise over 5,000 towards the exhibition. Sponsorship opportunities. So we had a piece of work completed last year to say, well, actually, if we were to look at sponsorship, how much could we potentially achieve for the museum? And so that's been defined for us about 2.5, and that will be a focus for us going forward. So we're progressing some targeted conversations around that. So as mentioned, your graphs in terms of the education participation. So while we did well in terms of Term 4 and we booked for Term 1, we are still tracking behind where our contracted numbers are. In terms of the exhibition developed design, you can see that we're tracking on budget and to time frame there with the developed design to be completed in October. So the graph on the left is really based on activity occurring. So if just to we set the budget to say, well, actually, how much would we need to be able to deliver this level of activity? So it doesn't, if you're sort of saying, why is there 7 odd million missing, it's because we've matched it to activity. But they largely summarise the points that I've covered. I have thought it would be a useful view to split out the total with the initiative of the Friends of the Museum as well, so you can kind of see how much that's jumped up from that from the soft launch at the Art Awards. In terms of further media and leverage, we'll keep you updated once we have some dates on that, so you can all be glued to your TVs.
Okay, thank you. Stuart's here too to answer any questions if anyone has any questions regarding those slides on the museum. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you, Alex, for your report. Hi, Stuart. The difference, just for those people who haven't been following, there have been comments popping up on social media about why is it going to take till 2028 before we see an open museum, considering that we've been telling the public that the construction will be finished in September of this year. If you could clarify that would be great.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's the design period to be able to bring those artefacts, tonga, back into the museum takes a bit of time, and then we need to install all of that as well. So that's just the delay. So we've given ourselves 12 months. We hope to be more ambitious than that, but there are some risks that we've baked into that timeline in terms of access for suppliers and contractors.
So it's just a practicality. That's just the way it is. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again, Alex and Stuart, for the presentation. First question is just around the first slide, just around the challenges, and you mentioned the discoverables that we could still find something during the construction. It's just around that. How much, how far more along do we go until we can be pretty certain that that is not that big of a concern?
I guess it depends if you wear an engineer's hat or if you wear, a museum running hat. I think engineers would be far more risk averse to say, look, we need to be careful. You don't know what you're going to find out until you're at the end of that. I think from our perspective, we've had minor discoverables, nothing big, and so we have probably optimistically ambitious that the closer we get to the end, the less the risk is.
Thank you. And just a comment just around really great to see the exhibition fundraising progress has been much higher than the target so far, and I really hope that continues that trend. So well done, thanks for that.
And a comment from our CE?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Since there was some shade thrown at the engineers' hats, I feel like as the project sponsor, I should say it's always a balance between what we can release from a contingency that was approved by council towards the wider exhibition. What I will say is, I think in May we are planning to bring a paper to council to outline the strategy for taking us through from where we are now to completion, and that will, that has a reasonable amount of commercial implications, contracts, etc. So, that may not address the question about how the public sees it, but you councillors will get some really clear ideas of what the key milestones, steps, and stages are between now and opening, and make your own views about risk from that point onwards. Thanks.
And just further to that, May will be a workshop and June will be a council meeting. So, the chance to kind of look at it twice.
Thank you very much. It doesn't look like there's any further questions for Stuart. Thank you very much for coming in anyway. We'll move on now to the parks and open spaces, and we've got Rob here as well to answer any questions.
As I've mentioned, we've got sort of duplication of highlights in this space. So landscaping plans have been completed for the museum. Other highlights were we had a piece of work that looked at removing some hazardous trees along Tarawera Road, and that was following a storm event in January that knocked a few over, and so that brought our attention to actually do some analysis along there, and the team jumped into action, and that work's been completed. We have 4 playground renewals underway at the moment as well, so McIntyre Park, Deborah Place and Allison Street are underway, and then we also have, in terms of some challenges, I know this is a topic or a project that's Council will have been aware of for some time. We're at the consenting stage with Environment Bay of Plenty. Bay of Plenty Regional Council, it shows my age, and we've had a couple of queries around geotech, which we've addressed, and then the other areas just around stormwater, so we're just working through that. But once we have that consent granted, we'll be able to give a more certain timeframe around when those works will be completed. Moving into our open space operations team. Operational, we've talked about this a little bit previously in terms of the integration of InfraCore. The operational performance metrics have been set now for those field teams, and we've got work occurring in terms of quality assurance and health and safety audits, fleet management and team engagement. So we're starting to see some real connection between the teams out in the field and then setting those standards from the teams in HQ. We've rolled out One Council training around the use of the field app, so that we'll start to see some jumps there around in-field job management and recording as well. I think I guess a key point here, and it's similar for the library, that there are challenges recruiting into this space. So we're carrying about 8. They're in various different stages of the application process. That does impact or can impact our levels of service. What we're doing at the moment, and you may have seen some stories in the paper, we are still meeting our levels of service, particularly around mowing, and that's where we're carrying a couple of the vacancies, which is probably on the upper end, and then pair that with some a strong period of growth with a lot of rain and a lot of warmth. We're sort of seeing some pictures where probably doesn't meet what we would like to see out there. So we'll just keep managing that. We'll share if we think we've got some issues. At the moment, we've got some tools around overtime. We've got contractors that we can use, which we've been throwing at certain functions when we need to. But it is a challenge in this space, and the turnover is pretty high. And as our Chief Financial Officer mentioned, that actually sometimes it's the lag of when someone leaves, and when you get someone on board, we experience some of the challenges. In terms of our programs team in the open spaces area, the off-road section of Whakarewarewa Forest Loop opened, and there was an announcement in terms of government funding through the Minister. For those of you that are frequenters to the forest, that just means we've cut out that concrete piece along the main highway, and now we have this really nice little off-road section. So that's making the experience of that great ride really high quality. New Zealand Māori Touch Nationals, Secondary School Touch Nationals, we've had 5 years of those people enjoying their competitions in our region. Again, you will have heard that they have made the decision to share those tournaments around, and we remain hopeful that we'll be a place of choice going forward. But really successful 5 years of those tournaments here. We've had quite high use of Lake Tikitapu over January and February. So the event days per year have increased by about 200% since 2024, and 45% of those days happen in the January-February periods. We'll talk a little bit about that in the programs space when, for Wiramu's area, because there's I guess, a watching brief in terms of how resource heavy that is on council in terms of the way that we do our bookings, and we're just looking at whether or not there's some efficiencies to make there. So we're not, turning in and away. We're being able to utilise our parks and reserves as efficiently as we can for those events. And then in terms of the dashboards, so we've got on the left-hand side our REQs, so those are outstanding requests. I guess the key point is the red line, and sorry, it's a little bit hard to see the contrast on those graphs, but there has been a significant focus on our tree program. So we've prioritised timeframes around urgent, medium and long-term tree works, and that's why you're seeing quite a significant dip there. I will say there have been, when we joined the two systems together, so Infracore and us, there was some duplication, so some of that reduction's a duplication. We're kind of hovering around the 100, which we think is probably about right for our region and the extent of tree planting we do have. In terms of the outstanding or the other, that's the other one that sort of jumped up a little bit. It is a little bit of a miscellaneous section, so some of them can be just general inquiries. So again, probably tracks with the increase in events, etc. Rights to occupy, esplanade renewals falls into there. Tree trust location requests, fencing contributions, keys requests and key returns. So it is a bit of a mixed bag, but yeah, that has driven up in the last month. In terms of the residents' experience monitor, and this might go to some of your questions, Councillor Sanford, that survey provides us with some more detailed information for us, and we look to try and take action where we can. So we've got sort of lakes reserves kind of a holding about where we expect them to be, but we did have that dip in sports fields. So that looking into that, medical officers, Linton Park and Puarenga Park were the ones driving the dip there. Recognise, and as you quite rightly pointed out, Councillor, small sample size, but useful information for what people are seeing and observing. So we're doing more around toilet cleans, which was one of the things that came out, and then particularly around those sports seasons and those sports tournaments, and then field closures was the other thing that drives that. So just quicker notification for when we make a call whether or not the field needs to be closed or not.
Okay, any questions? Rob's here as well. If there are any questions on this part of the presentation, Councillor Brown, followed by Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see Tiki Tapu and the lakes are being used for events. I just wonder if you could speak to biosecurity and how we are managing that with gold clams in the close by.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, biosecurity with lakeside lake events is an issue that is worked between both the District Council, Regional Council and Te Aroha Lakes Trust. So we give permission for using the reserve next to the lake, and those users get permission from both the Regional Council and the Te Aroha Lakes Trust for activities on the lake. There are a number of conditions, both coming from Te Aroha Lakes Trust and Bay Planning Regional Council, about biosecurity, which has things like inflatable devices have to be cleaned before they go in, following a proper procedure. Generally, events that have kayaks and canoes and things like that come from out of district have a pre-cleaning before use requirement. So there's actually, the Regional Council sets up a piece of equipment that has hot water working to follow anti-clam, anti-weed sort of practices, and then they're also cleaned before they leave the site. So there's a number of regulatory pathways that happen from both the Regional Council and Te Aroha Lakes Trust for biosecurity measures. We combine with all of that as well in terms of making space available for that to happen on the reserve.
Okay, thank you. And so are we comfortable with those procedures are working well?
Yes, we are. Yep, and both Te Aroha Lakes Trust and the Regional Council support that.
Excellent, thanks Rob. One more question if I may. Was raised a little while ago, I can't remember the time frames, but health and safety with the gardens on Fenton Street. Are we changing our practices at all to mitigate those health and safety risks for our employees?
Yes, we have initiated that. So some of the gardens on Fenton Street have been removed. There are other areas that are being prepared for the transfer of flowering plants, or the relocation. So we keep our square meterage. So that has started about a month ago. And then there's also going to be a concerted effort around the change of the planting program, which happens in April. So that'll be the main time that they come out and the new beds get established, so that there's not a significant period of months between, I suppose, the community observing what's happening. It'll be happening quite quickly in a short period of time. The key ones that were the most concerning have been removed.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you very much for the report. I just had a question also about Lake Takitapu, and you said that there's been about a 200% increase in events out there, and I was just wondering if our public facilities out there are fit for purpose, and if they're not up to a standard, if there's a process in play to bring forward renewals or to bring forward improvements out there.
Very good question, Councillor. Yes, there has been an increase in event days. A small, probably half of that has been related to very large events. So when we bring multiple thousand people in for a big event, the other half of it has been the commercial activity, the aqua play sort of thing that's come in that has a sort of I suppose, a catch the general public type of approach and some attraction. For those ones of that later nature that is catching the general use, we think we have the facilities that are able to cope with that. When we do have those big events that come in, however, there's a number of ways that is managed so that other toilet blocks are open up, and we also have a requirement on event organisers to bring in portaloos over a certain point. The issue with that is that if an event participant has a choice of a portaloo or a RLC toilet, they will generally go to the RLC toilet. So we do have to do some work in that space, especially the toilet block closest to the forest edge is the one that is highlighted as bringing further forward as we can to cope with that. We will probably have a discussion in the LTP process about Tikitapu as an event space area and how we can make that potentially more suitable for large events.
Thank you. And just one more question, if I may. Just on Tatoki Place, in our induction, I believe it was mentioned that that would be completed by this coming summer. I was just wondering if you could give any indication on whether the delays are going to push it out beyond this summer, and also if there's been a decision on which sports are likely to be using Tatoki Place, or if that's a decision for later on.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Titoki will be delayed. We have had a very long consenting process, and the main issue really has been around stormwater. The Tonkin and Taylor reports that we're still getting finalised with the Regional Council. That will probably restrict, because we're now rolling into a wet period and construction. The intention was to have been underway by now, and so that we would be finishing construction due to the main wet period. We might end up with a bit of a seasonal delay, in which case construction might have to happen, or might have to be initiated after the wettest part of the winter. So I would expect that we're looking at a 6 to 12 month delay in terms of hopefully only 6 months. We'll have summer activity going for the next summer, but we had intended that we would be ready, well ready to go into 26 summer. We're probably going to be more likely the 27 winter season where we'll be kicking off.
Okay, I'll take a final. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Rob. Nice to see you. Just a question around the One Council training using the Field app. The app is obviously new to the staff. Was there already some sort of in-field monitoring process through Infocor, or is it's a new rollout? And secondly, the data that's gathered through that, is that mainly for operational use, or does it feed back into some of these reports that we get to see?
Thank you, Councillor. So the field app that they're using now directly connects with One Council. They were previously doing work scheduling and monitoring through NetSuite, which didn't relate particularly well to the financial cost of doing those jobs, which was the problem that we had in understanding levels of service. What do things actually cost? Now with the field app, it will link through, it will record time, it will record equipment, it will also allow collation and integration of data so that we can understand what particular services cost, and it will also, it also allows them to track and record much better in terms of being able to report what's happening. So we'll be able to analyse the data for better reporting.
Oh, that's great news, especially when we're doing the level of service review. The data will be most useful. Thank you.
I'll take one final question on this from Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rob and Alex. Just carrying on from Councillor Sanford's line of questions regarding Titoki Place. So we voted that in the 23-24 annual plan. So I believe that was $2 million. We're now at 2026, so 2 years. We are told numerous times of inflationary pressures on projects. So my question is, now that we're not likely to see anything until 2026, 27, if we're lucky, that's quite a time delay. Is there any likelihood that that budget will not be sufficient to deliver the product?
We haven't had any suggestions that the budget will not be sufficient. The engineer's estimate is still valid. We're hoping to go to tender as soon as we get this consent, which we're expecting in weeks. So that tender process will obviously identify what the market is for that type of work, but the engineer's assessment that we've had is we're comfortable that we still should be able to deliver all what we have planned to deliver within the budget that we had.
Thank you.
Councillors, we've still got two more parts to this presentation. There's partnerships and programs and custom solutions. I see Wiramu's sitting at the back there, so what I might do is we will finish this part of the agenda, then we will take the morning tea break, and then we'll come back and deal with the airport after that. So we'll move on now. Alex, to partnerships and programs, and Wiramu's there to also answer any questions on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Starting with the highlights, our youth council is underway, so we've had our wānanga there, Pōhiri, and they are focused on the recovered water project, so that's going well. We're getting good feedback from our youth councillors. Night market satisfaction, so it's sitting around 88 over January, 88% over January and February, and you'll see in your graphs later on some good growth there and some modest improvements. Waitangi Day celebration held at Wairiki. Again, good numbers attended that. And then we've been working quite closely with our community halls, with 9 out of 10 visited at the time of writing this report, so understanding kind of their plans and their requirements, which is helping us support them and navigate them through various council systems. Some of our challenges, so mentioned in the last presentation of parks, that we are seeing a high demand for support around resourcing community events. There's a lot of requests around kind of locations and bookings. So one of the things we're looking at here is a tool that will significantly improve the customer experience. So they can see what's available, they can book it, so they don't have to go through someone, and that will reduce some of the touch times, and hopefully mean that we can optimise utilisation of those spaces as well. So that's a piece of work we're scoping out at the moment. We are and this won't, I don't believe, come as any surprise to this chamber, funding environment remains tight, so we're hearing that from our community partners as well. So the funds that they used to have access to, or the extent to which they had access to them is challenging. In terms of looking at the breakdown of the market, so attendance average across 2025 was up 2.5% from 2024. So just giving you a view across the calendar year. If we compare January 2026 with January 25, we've got a bit of a modest increase there of 1%. And we are seeing satisfaction increase for the same period though. So we're seeing some good trends there. In terms of the funding, in terms of the match funding, we've granted 46,000 out of what we would typically have done by the stage of about 50. The total year budget of that is 100,000. Partnerships tracking on year to date, so 98% awarded with from the same budget, and that's 195,000 annual budget there. Those partnership contracts are set on a 3-yearly basis, so this is just delivering to those milestones. Our creative communities, again, we are tracking where we expected to be, so we've granted 32,000 of our year-to-date budget of the same, total year 64,000, so we have a round of that open at the moment. Just for your interest, we've included in here a view on, for every dollar we invest, what do our partners, what are they able to leverage? So we've done some initial analysis around sort of a 2.5. So every dollar we put in, they managed to leverage 2.5. Volunteer hours as well understood. That's part of our match funding criteria. But they're also using our funding to leverage additional funding and do additional fundraising as well. So I do want to state, because I know this has been a question raised before by councillors, this is an interim position. We are still planning to do that more detailed breakdown of fund performance and outcomes in line with the policy refresh that will come later on in the year.
Any questions then for this part of the report? We've got Waramu here. Councillor Barker.
Actually, with your indulgence, just a bouquet perhaps to the team that have been doing the community halls engagement, to Robert Tane for connecting with all the communities and finding out about their halls and their community, and it's been well received. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barker, for that. Any questions on this part of the report? No? You can take your bouquet. Thank you very much, Waramu. And we'll move on now to the customer solutions.
Okay, last one. So, and bear with me, you've got me. No Laurie today, so I'll do my best. And if there's anything I can't answer, I'll come back to you if you have anything specific. Just looking at the total call and email volume over February, we're about now 9,000 interactions. But some really good progress is being made around the guest portal. So you'll remember this is a way for our community to self-serve, and it was launched for dogs and limbs at that time. So we've had no reports of any complaints with the system. So that's always a good thing with a new piece of technology, and we see that particularly helping around the dog registration renewals in June, so that system will alleviate some of the pressures on calls and emails. So in February 2026, 55% of inquiries were resolved at first point of contact. So that's a measure that we have internally, but I thought you might like to hear that. That's an improvement of where we were same time last year at 49%. So I think what that's saying to me is the investment we've made around training. So we do take quite a bit of time to train our customer solutions people up, as well as the enhancements around AI are really starting to make some dividends there. So that means that every call we're able to resolve is one less call that gets put through to the rest of the business, to our subject matter experts. Some of the, I guess, risks that's worth raising with the chamber. We are anticipating, higher volumes with the launch of FOGO and parking. So we're working closely with the GMs in that space to understand, what we learnt through previous initiatives around, changes to waste and parking to get a feel for what additional resources we might need. That might be people, but also, our FAQs, etc. This is a really data-rich team, is probably a fair way to say it. So what sits in behind this and that my management team uses is a bit of a breakdown of the nature of the calls that we get. I guess one thing I will say is we've compared it rather than a longitudinal view, like we've given you for the library and for the markets, we've given you a month versus month view from previous financial years. And the reason we've done that is it's quite cyclical, what this team deal with. So we launch rates at certain times, the dog process happens at certain times, and so we think that's probably the fairest comparison. So emails tracking well. While we've received 500 fewer emails from the same time last year, again I think because we've got some self-service stuff happening, we have been able to maintain 100% response rate. The line across the top just indicates our service level, our target there. So we've got a target of 95 and we're achieving 100, which was the same as last year. No abandonment rate for emails, so they were all responded to. So we've set ourselves a pretty low one there of 1%, but we're at 0%. In terms of emails responded to within 24 hours, we've pushed ourselves and improved that by 1% from the same time in last year, and are exceeding our service level of 95. So we've got a 97% of emails being answered within 24. If we look at phone calls, we've set ourselves again a target of answering 95% of all calls. We're slightly below that for 2026. We have been carrying some vacancies in this space, in which we're working to recruit. But again, our ability to respond and answer, it does kind of depend on people in seats down there and people being able to pick up the phone. Slight increase in terms of, or decrease, sorry, in terms of calls answered has shown a slight increase in our abandonment rate. So we're higher than we want to be, so by about 0.15% above our target of 5% abandoned. In terms of our service level, so that's calls answered within 1 minute, we've set ourselves a target there of 80%. We're sitting at about 72%. That's the same as last year as well. For those of you that crunching the numbers, you'll see that we did have fewer calls this year as well. Some of that will be as a result of our guest portals, but we also did have a spike of calls same time last year. So we had some dog infringement notices that went out. We had the Tarawera sewage scheme also, which drove a spike in calls at that time.
Thanks very much, Alex. Any questions then on customer service? Councillor Brown, followed by Councillor Patterson and Councillor Barker. This is a very popular topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alex, I wonder if you could paint a picture for me on how two things. One is the queries, and you've highlighted FOGO and parking as an example. If we are getting multiple calls on the same question, how then might that feed into the communications that is a different department to you? Can you give me a picture of the link and how we can utilise communications to improve?
Yeah, really good question. So I guess starting off, the AR functionality helps us a lot. So we rely on units within the business to give us key data that we put into our knowledge base, and the AI allows us to pull that up in a very quick way, which we can respond to. Once we have that data, we can feed that back to the business and say, look, we're getting 80% of the calls that we're getting relate to these particular questions. So we have that ability to kind of feed feed that back into the business and make sure that, if we can front foot some of the communication to reduce those calls, then that's possible.
Very good. That's the answer we hope for. Along a similar line, but if there's questions that customers raise that potentially offers us an opportunity to improve the business, how do those calls feed into the system?
Part of the analysis that sits in behind this is the type and nature of the calls that we receive and which part of the business. So I look at that with my lead team, and it also comes to our executive. I think there's patterns in that we can extract, but we're pretty new, I guess, in interrogating the data in that way. But I think there are some opportunities to kind of build and grow from what we're pulling out.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Alex. Just regarding the request for service portal on our website, in comparison to phone calls and other means of contacting us, how would you say that rates?
That is a very good question, Councillor. I think I'll have to go away and do some analysis for you in terms of just the percentages that we get through each.
Yeah, likely, for example, I would imagine that at this time we'd still be getting the majority of our issues reported to us via the phone instead of the portal that is readily available and has been for a number of years, my understanding.
Well, we've got in terms of the numbers, we've got about 50-50 in terms of emails and calls, but I think your question is a good one in terms of, the volume through the REQs versus those through that register portal. I think one of the things we do encourage people to do is to use that system to alert us to things. We would like to be everywhere all at once, but that's a challenge for us. So the REQ helps us brings our attention to things that we might not have seen in our kind of routine work. But I will come back to you on that. I think.
Thank you. It's just an observation that it's quite challenging to use. I kind of pride myself as knowing how to work my way around our own website, whereas I think for other people who go looking for how they can make a report, it can be hard to find, firstly, and then once they get there, they're not quite sure what to do. So phone call will always be the quick option, then sending an email is another option. But if we could somehow utilise that more, it might also help speed things up.
Thank you, and great feedback. And look, any observations around difficult to use, that's something we'd want to get onto pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Alex. Just harking back to the one of your slides where 55% of inquiries are resolved at the first point of contact. Can you just explain what happens to those that pass through the system? And as a second part to the question, do we have any data about how those are closed off, and do we have data around the time it takes for us to close those off? Because there's been just some feedback I've received that sometimes when a query goes through the system further, that it doesn't, the communication back to the public sometimes is missing sometimes. But yeah, I'll just welcome any thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. In terms of our time frame, when it's passed on, if we get told, we'll close it. So we'll have a time frame there, but there's I guess a loop that needs to be closed. So really great question. I think something that's worth looking into a little bit more as well, like how do we keep the number, who's checking in, are we closing things out in a timely way? And the process though is once it's passed on, it sits with that relevant subject matter expert to respond to.
Thank you. It'd just be interesting to see the timeframes maybe sometimes. Thank you.
Any other questions to Alex? I've just got one. What's happening with the after hours? How's that going?
We had a few teething issues through you, Madam Chair. Some teething issues at the outset, but we've resolved those. I think the analysis that we've got is the majority of the calls happen before 10 o'clock at night. We've also implemented, if it's non-urgent, phone back or leave a message, but you don't need to necessarily speak to someone, so we're trying to sort of triage the urgency around that. But going well, but we are looking into what our long-term solution is around that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll take a break. Maybe if we come back now at 2:45, we'll take the break then. We'll do the airport CCO quarterly reporting and then we'll move into confidential. So we'll come back at 2:45. Thank you, councillors. Everyone ready? Got the live stream going. Good morning, councillors. We'll reconvene now. I see we've got Kevin waiting online and her worship the Mayor, and we've got Nicole here. So we're going to move into the CCO quarterly report for the Rotorua Regional Airport with the year-to-date to January 2026. Can I have a mover and a seconder that the report be received? Thank you, Councillor Sanford, and that's seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that's carried. And welcome to Nicole and Kevin, welcome too. We can see you on screen as well.
Good morning, Morena, everyone. Thank you for having us here to present to you. Obviously, you have read the report, but I will go over the highlights in the presentation, and then obviously take any of your questions. So I'll probably move through this presentation fairly quickly, as I typically do. So financial performance. If I could summarise the year, basically we're on track. So revenue is, while passenger numbers are below last year, revenue, because of the way landing fees are adjusted, is sort of on track with budget. And we are ahead of, net surplus is well ahead of budget, but that's primarily due to the timing issues, well, not timing issues, but the timing of some large expense items. So if you've been out at the runway, out at the airport recently, you will have seen we did some significant works in February on the apron. It's had a full surface treatment and new line markings, and so those haven't flowed through into these numbers yet because it's January. So that obviously net surplus being 86% ahead of budget will pare back as we move into the back half of the year and those larger maintenance items flow through. But effectively everything else, both overheads and revenue, is sitting very, very close to budget. Aeronautical charges, we're in consultation with Air New Zealand at the moment, being our major airline partner, so there's quite a tried and true process for working through aeronautical charges. So we're consulting on our price period for the next 3 years, so from FY27 to FY29. And so that's under consultation at the moment, and expecting the next round of feedback from them later this week. Non-financial performance, basically everything's on track. Obviously we still hold our operating certificate, and sorry, just realised I didn't send you the compliance calendar, but I can tell you it's all green. And we will have a high-level asset management plan at the end of the year, so we time that so that it flows through after we've got the end-of-year finances, so it's the most relevant time period for you. Operations and compliance, a few things going on. Advocacy and engagement with Air New Zealand remains a focus. I feel like I've had this line, or a line very similar to this, on these slides probably for the last year or 2 years, but it couldn't be more true at the moment. So continuing to engage with Air New Zealand at every level of the business, and ensuring that that we're supporting from the ground up, so we're supporting operations with anything they need. We had some flights were having restrictions earlier in the year. We've moved quite quickly to be able to come up with a plan to relieve that, so that Air New Zealand don't have any operational constraints, right through to working with the networks right up to chief executive level. So we're continuing to engage at all levels. Ongoing tree work, providing for operational improvements, just what I talked about. So obviously obstacles in the way of aircraft aren't great things. We have decided to bring forward, we do every 5 years, typically every 5 years is the requirement. We have to do a full tree survey look at all the obstacles in the area. This year we've been able to be a lot more selective and strategic about how we do it as well. So we've worked with Aeropath and with Air New Zealand to understand where critical areas are, to make sure we've got the best available data and we can process that quickly. So we're becoming quite sophisticated in the way that we can manage these obstacles. And that was you'll see that the airport was recognised twice at the NZ Airports Awards last year, so it's been a while since I saw you, so I just thought it was worth mentioning that. And one of those awards was an Operational Aeronautical Excellence Award for Black Maps, who is our partner in working on those obstacle management improvements. And then, as I mentioned before, the apron surface treatment has been completed. But everything's ticking along BAU quite well. Looking forward, we've got some big chunky things that we're working on. Obviously, Stage 1A of the Business Park, which we will talk about in a moment. That's been approved by the board and pending access to borrowing through LGFA, and we can discuss that further soon. We're investigating a solar array project with possibility of RLC being an off-taker. That's still in the investigation stage, and as we've got more information, we'll continue to we'll take you along the journey, and as we go through that process. Operational projects are in the planning stages. We've got airfield ground lighting replacement. So, as you know, Airways are divesting of their airfield ground lighting assets. They have underinvested in those in a long time, and while some aspects of it are reasonably new, there are some aspects that are ripe for replacement, mainly the lighting that you see actually on the airfield itself. Some of the off-airfield lighting has been renewed more recently by Airways itself. So we're working on a process at the moment and have some consultants helping manage that process this is something that pretty much every airport around the country is going through at the moment, so there's a lot of expertise in the space within the industry that we can tap into. And obviously just continually looking at runway surface treatments and other maintenance items, but also stress testing those to make sure that we're investing in the right areas at the right time. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Nicole, for your report. Kevin, did you want to make any other additional comments as the Chair? Oh, sorry, we've just got no volume at the moment. I'll take it that there's no comments at this stage. Kevin, if you want to chip in later on, please do so. We've just got a few sound issues at our end at this time. So thank you very much. Questions now to Nicole. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report, Nicole. Just regarding the lighting improvements, and you mentioned the surface
treatment.
Treatment, yep. Does that still keep us compliant for jets if we were ever to get them back?
Yes. Yes, in short. Yes.
Great.
There's not. Yes.
And the same would be said for the tree management as well.
Yes, absolutely. We have looked at whether we break out, the specific things for trees, for jets. We're kind of focusing on the aircraft that we've got at the moment, and then if we were to get jets back, that would put us in a better situation, and then we may need to sort of focus on the edge, but the capability and the improvements, the vast improvements that we're making in the space will go a long way to it sort of supports holistically. It's really hard to divide them out. Everything's actually really intertwined. So it's not like you specifically do this or this for turboprops or jets. It is all quite interlinked and works well together.
One final question. Does our airport currently offer aviation refuelling?
Yes, we do. So BP out there, they do the main refuelling for Air New Zealand and other services. And then we have one or two other avgas providers on site as well.
Thank you.
And just on that point, Nicole, perhaps you could just reassure everyone around what's happened with the recent Air New Zealand announcements about flight consolidation or cancellation because of the jet fuel issue and that we're not really affected here in Rotorua?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you will be aware, Air New Zealand made some sort of ad hoc one-off changes 2 weeks ago now, looking at a bespoke sort of 6-week period. That was their initial influx. What they do, when I was at Air New Zealand, I remember doing exactly the same thing when there were sort of earthquakes, Christchurch earthquakes, that kind of things, big shocks in demand. And they look at it very line by line. They're basically trying to find 2 flights that are fairly close together where you could combine the passengers and put them all on one flight. Because we have fairly low frequency out at the airport at the moment, there was only 1 return service. So out of a 6-week period, there was 1 Christchurch Rotorua on 1 day that was cancelled and the passengers reaccommodated. For context, other airports sort of were seeing 30 to 50 cancellations over that period plus. So in New Zealand, I understand, are now going through the next sort of block and having a look at what changes they can make. Yeah, and I don't have any further information on that, but I would expect that because of our frequency, the opportunities for them to minimise capacity without having a severe impact on demand and customer service would be low compared to some other ports.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you back in the chamber, Nicole.
Thank you.
I don't know if you've been overcome with a great deal of humility or not, but you mentioned in the report that there are 2 recognitions at the New Zealand Airports Awards for us, but you only told us what one of them were.
Well, the other one was. So one was the black maps in the aeronautical. The other was actually for Charlie, our operations dog. So Charlie got a special mention from the awards judges. Charlie's the only operations dog in New Zealand or in the airports at the moment, and he has had a very marked effect on our wildlife hazard management occurrences and bird life, sort of bird strikes. And he got a special engraved bowl from the judges. And it sits in Ben's office.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thank you, Kevin. We are about to go into a confidential section, so Kevin, if you did want to stay online, you are welcome to do so. So, councillors, thank you, Nicole. We've got 4 matters that we will take in public excluded. The items are Business Park Stage 1A, the Parking Progress Report and Next Steps in the Change, Pensioner Housing Proposed Redevelopment of Lucas Place Pensioner Housing and Options for Rental Increase, and the Rotorua District Licensing Committee List Member and Chairperson Appointments. The reason that we are going into confidential for all of these matters is to carry out commercial activities without prejudice or disadvantage, to carry on negotiations without prejudice or disadvantage, to protect information which is a subject to an obligation of confidence or could be compelled to provide under the authority of any enactment, and to protect the privacy of natural persons. So can I have a mover and a seconder to move into confidential? Thank you, Councillor Wang. That is seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. We'll just wait for the live stream.